Thanks so much. I think that was a really wonderful opening and introduction by Bertha and really set the scene beautifully for us to go into our next topic. Our topic today is really talking about large-scale solar PV projects and agreements with PPPs, with government, but also really to look at where we've been and I think where we are in the market and where we're really going to. So we've got a wonderful panel with us today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We've got Vido Schnabel, we've got Derek Botha, and we've got Andre Nepkin. So Vido, I'm going to start with you. Just please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Canadian Solar, just to start, and sort of maybe just a little bit around the PPPs and the industry and where you've seen the industry go, maybe. I think you and I have been in the industry for a very, very long time together. So if you'll kick off with that.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy, and welcome everybody to this Solar Power Africa. It is quite interesting to be here again today next to the mining indaba because the mining indaba is looking for energy solutions, so it's actually quite a good thing that we're here today. So my name is Vido Schnabel. I'm working for Canadian Solar the last 10 years and been in the solar industry since 2008. I think I did my first project in Namibia in the desert, actually, in a place called Kontikontis. Was the first 100 kilowatt system. Been in the projects business and also the supply of modules as Canadian Solar. We're, I think, number 4 or 5 in the global context. So this year we should reach about 50 gigawatts of solar panel production capacity. We're very going into the inverter business. We have got inverters up to 350 kilowatts for big utility plants, but also the smaller CNI inverters. And of course, battery storage is a very big topic these days. We have just launched and announced our new 20-foot 5 megawatt hour battery and Sol Bank. And we've deployed already a large amount of battery solutions, especially in the US, but also in the UK. And of course, we want to do this also in Africa. Maybe a little bit of other history. I've also been of this event last year and years before, actually, as the chairperson of Sapphire, and been very familiar with this industry and what is going on and what the needs are. And Bertha, thank you for your solar introduction. It was very precise, all the numbers that you mentioned there. But I also think so my biggest challenge for this industry and for policy is the speed. We are far too slow. And that is really a big ask for everybody. Put shoulder to the wheel, get this thing going. We have to move much, much faster. Our planet is at risk. And if we don't do that all together much faster, and policy is one of the big handbrakes, then we're not going to make it. And we experienced in Cape Town already a day zero coming up. These things will occur more and more, and we really have to speed up the deployment of renewable energy. And I just said one thing yesterday. Did you know that in one day, the electricity that is, or the energy that is sent to the planet in one day, so 24 hours, so all the way around the planet, is enough to power the entire planet for 1 year. So one needs to imagine what kind of power solar has for this planet to be self-sufficient, to be clean. And we're not utilizing that, and that shows what kind of opportunity we have. So maybe that's as a short intro to this.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vido. So maybe to hand over to Derek. Derek, if you can just introduce yourself and your company. And I know you've got some really good experience both across Africa and into America and other jurisdictions around providing providing equipment into the market. So I think also quite interesting how you see, obviously providing a lot of equipment into EPCs, but those EPCs are typically working for IPPs that are into government-backed PPPs. So thanks. Over to you, Derek.
Thank you, Wendy. Nice to be back here. Last years, very interested in South African market. I am South African, although I'm working for a US company based in the United States. I started in solar almost 30 years ago in Victoria.
Sorry, Derek, do you want to just move your mic a little closer? Can everybody hear? No? Is it?
I have a loud voice as well, so I can also maybe, I see it's working. So yes, my name is Derek Botha. Wendy, thank you very much. I'm Chief Commercial Officer of Game Change Solar. We do solar tracking system and racking systems, and we have recently introduced transformers, but just for the US market at the moment. I've been involved in solar since 1997, so almost 30 years. I started out in Pretoria manufacturing solar modules and supplying that to Telkom and to the rest of Africa. And at that time, just maybe to add to Bertha's numbers, is the market was 100 megawatts. Africa was 8 megawatts, so 8% of the world market was in Africa. It obviously has grown. Africa has not kept pace over the last years. But I think that that is something that we need to address. And again, Bertha's numbers about the sun insolation in Africa is incredible. So it's a huge resource, and we really need to use it. That's just my opinion. It's a passion of mine. So I just wanted to express that. As far as our company is concerned, we are probably around number 3 in the world in tracking systems, in solar tracking systems. We operate primarily in the United States, which is our biggest market, but we've expanded internationally. We now supply into South America, other regions of Africa. We have a large project in Egypt at the moment. We have quite a lot going into India. We have projects in Australia, the Middle East, and Southern Africa, of course, and we hope to build up more in Southern Africa because that is a personal passion of mine, and I keep pushing with the company that we do more and more in this region and build it up. I look forward to hearing what everybody's got to say and maybe participation from the audience a little bit later, but thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Derek. Andre, I'm going to hand over to you and introduce yourself and the exciting new markets or products, or how you want to explain it through Discovery.
Thank you. Yes, great, you can hear me. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm a little bit different to the other panelists here today. Don't have trackers or panels or solutions of those kinds. I think you were probably surprised when you saw the words Discovery Green here. Yes, it is the same Discovery that you do potentially get your medical aid with, that you do potentially bank with, that you do potentially have your insurance with. So it is usually the question we get is what on earth is Discovery doing in the space? And I think our origins around this is we are an extremely patriotic company as a whole. We are not really in Cape Town, but if you look at Joburg, we're very involved in sort of national infrastructure elements. You'll see branded potholes in South Africa, in the Joburg side, and we get involved in a lot of areas on that side. The reason I think we got into this and believe we can play a big role here is we're playing the role of an aggregator. But in a very, very different sense. You might have seen statistics being thrown out that South Africa is short of 6 gigawatts of new projects that need to be built in the renewable industry every year up to 2030, which is a big number. But just to contextualize that, and this gives a bit of context to it, last year alone, we only built 1.5 gigawatts, or we've only started construction of 1.5. So there's an enormous gap and an enormous lag between what is needed as a country and what needs to be built. So we've taken a decision to say, listen, it's on one side we have incredible engineers and IPPs and project developers who can construct these large renewable plants, large solar, large wind. But the one thing that we do need is to stimulate the market. And the market is sort of constrained by the fact that the world is operating in a world where the government procurement has been 20-year contracts for energy. And the majority of companies you talk to in South Africa are excited about going renewable, they're excited about transitioning to a large percentage of renewable energy. But the one thing they're not quite comfortable with is committing for the long term, and committing for the long term for a small percentage of their renewable energy. And we think there's a need to change that. There's a way to change that with trust. There's a way to change that with product innovation. There's a way to change that with a number of different factors, and Discovery is playing in that role. So we've been sort of under the radar for the last sort of 6 months. We are going out there a little bit more. We've been sort of feeling it out. We're proud to report that sort of at the end of last year, we have signed and finished our procurement, hoping to achieve financial close, but PPA signed and procurement is done. For what we're proud to say would be the largest private procurement of any private industry in South Africa to date. So excited to get that onto the grid and get that to companies. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andre. I think if we really look at where we are, we've come from a world sort of in South Africa back in 2010, 2011, where government's renewable energy procurement program started. And I think up until bid window 5, we had procured over 7,600 megawatts of power across technologies. And bid window 7, just having launched, I think looking at about 14 gigawatts, if I'm right. But we're seeing that market change so much, both with the changes in our utility and the changes, the very exciting move towards sort of this more liquid market going forward. But if we can first just take a look back, maybe, and I'm going to pose this as you, Vito. What was the success of the PPPs, from the REAP program? And yes, we are moving from this market, or we're continuing with this sort of a PPP market in terms of the REAP program, but there's always also this other element of this liquid market that's building and growing in its sort of fledgling stage alongside it. So I'd first like to address, what worked well with the PPPs in the past and how it really established our market. It got our entire industry up and running and mature, and now we're sort of moving to the next stage of innovation, which is really exciting. And then maybe I'll ask Andre and Derek to step in and see what they're seeing currently, and what they certainly with Discovery, what they're seeing going forward. So just to start with you, Vito, on the successes of the REAP program with those PPPs and how you actually see it going forward. Like, do you envision a bid window 8, 9, 10? We know there's batteries coming in. There's maybe gas coming. We're not necessarily talking about gas today. We're focusing on solar, but sort of your overall view, having experienced it for now 14 years, and your vision for PPPs certainly going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. And let me start with a statement is that, we're talking here at the Solar Power Africa, but it's not about one technology. I always call it the symphony of generators. So symphony means like an orchestra, and you've got different instruments, and they play at different times, at different tunes and volumes. And if there's a conductor that keeps everybody intact, then you've got a very fine piece of music. It's nice to listen to. So same is on the generation side. There's not one solution that fits it all. So it's a symphony of generators, and that's why the REAP program is also looking at in the renewable space at wind, solar, storage, biogas, hydro. So it's a combination of generators. That's first of all. It's not someone can do it all. The REAP program, as it was started off, and was brilliant. It was the best in the world. It was really a fantastic program. We in South Africa pulled this off. If you look at other programs in other continents, other countries, they had a lot of difficulties with their programs with, for example, feed-in tariffs, which they cost them quite dearly in the end, although it was still small in the bigger context, it doesn't really matter. But our REAP program was really fantastic. It was an absolute great design, and it was backed by government. That was one of the big successes, that we had this government-backed guarantees on these programs. Now the question is that still valid today, and will that still keep on going? One of the things that keeps it limited is, there is only one off-taker you have to sell to Eskom. It was not that you could choose other off-takers if you want to. And the other thing, it was very limited. It said, your AC capacity is 75 megawatts on the solar side, for example, and that's it. But what do you do with all of that excess energy? And the connection point, and that brings me to the next big topic on where REAP is stalling at the moment, and that is grid access. And grid access, now that the rules are slightly changed with curtailment rules and things like that, that opens that side up again. But it could have basically also asked for a combination of storage and generation. So these kind of things are there. One of the things now in hindsight, so when you start with it, the way it did it is like the lowest tariff wins, it's great. But now that the grid is saturated at those areas where the best yields are, the rules need to change. And everybody was up in arms when in round 6 no wind could be deployed because there was no grid access. Everybody knew how the grid access looked like. So those that cried didn't do their homework, I would say. But what it was is that basically the tariff is set at factory gate. So your plant, wherever that is built, that is the tariff that counts. But is that really the right tariff? The tariff should be counted at load center. And if you look at, for example, cost between the Northern Cape and Gauteng, then the cost of energy losses, grid costs, are roughly about 18 cents. That was one study that was done a few years back, showed that is. So if somebody could build in Gauteng or closer to load centers, they should have gotten a better tariff. And with that, we have got enough grid access in South Africa. That's not a problem. You have to go to Mpumalanga and then it's plenty. But of course, it's not the best solar spaces. So that is what needs to change now, so that the program needs to be reworked and looked at how can you push these projects also in areas where there are not ideally the best solar resources. But overall, our solar resources are 2 times better than in the UK or in Germany or whatever. The best areas in Germany has got 900 kilowatts per annum per square meter. We've got in the Northern Cape 2,600, 2,800, and even in Cape Town we've got 1,800. So it doesn't matter. We can plaster South Africa in any corner and still have got good resources. It just needs to be called on with a tariff.
Thanks, Vido. Derek, have you had experience with PPPs in other countries that we can bring into sort of where we are now and going forward in terms of sort of some of the challenges that Vido's spoken about? The competitiveness that we started with, and that was really around site selecting in a good site. But it's really difficult to be competitive now or know that you're competitive when the grid is... you can't go wherever the resource is best. Have you had experience with other PPPs in other markets in this regard?
Well, I just want to comment to what Vito said, is that the program was very good to start, and a lot of people were very anxious to get into it. And the problem was execution and getting things to move. And so a lot of parties that had actually won projects decided that they would leave and not participate further. And I think the message there is just, you got to execute on it. I think earlier today, Michael said, let's not just talk and say things, you got to get action, you got to do stuff. So just experiences internationally as far as where partnerships work. For me, it's not necessarily the partnerships, but it's facilitating the execution. So in Egypt, for example, they've facilitated that power plants get put in place, they make it available, the government stands behind it, they don't interfere too much, and you find that Egypt is putting in a lot of power very quickly. So there are projects going in one after the other in Egypt now, and you probably have a couple of gigawatts very shortly going in there. Saudi Arabia, same thing happening. I mean, they do have some restrictions in Saudi Arabia, but they copied South Africa as far as how do they do local content. So there was involvement there, and then, of course, copying of whatever we had done in South Africa as far as requiring for local or domestic content in projects. You find in other regions that there is involvement from government, but it's more facilitating, encouraging, and promoting and pushing. It's not necessarily that they have to be involved buying the projects or financing the projects, but ensuring that there's continuity. Because as a commercial enterprise, for us what's interesting, and for us to invest in a region, is there continuity? Is there going to be business tomorrow? Is there going to be business next year? And so the more we see that happening, we invest more and more in a region. So I think that's probably the perspective I see, is the government involvement needs to be facilitating. Today I would like to make a comment, is next door we have the mining indaba. I'm sure the Minister of Mines is there. I don't know that I saw a minister here, or if we will be getting one, but I think that there needs to be more government involvement and promotion and acceptance of it in South Africa, because talking is not going to make it happen. It's actions and support and pushing it. So that's just my perspective on it. Some of it may be a little bit controversial, but I've seen areas where it works, and I think that we need to do more, because there's a lot that can happen in South Africa. South Africa has got great resources. You have the people, you have the energy resource, you've got the area, you've got everything that is required for it. There's nothing to hold South Africa back in this area. So.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Derek. And I think, they say nothing good ever comes easy, right? So I think it's been 14 years of hard slog, but what the PPAs and government did do for us is enable us to establish a market. And then, the IPPs have come in, established, set up. We've set precedents on a lot of the elements, especially in terms of, economic development, local involvement, all of those really good things that have set a precedent. And if it wasn't for that, we would not, I don't think, be able to be going into this more fluid fledgling market that we're launching into now. So maybe, Andre, with that, talk about sort of saying, well, we need probably like 6 gigawatts a year built of renewables every year for the next sort of 5-6 years. There's a lot of numbers being thrown out by a lot of different people, but it's a lot, and there's a lot of opportunity for everybody. You've just taken that leap of faith into this market and been really innovative and entrepreneurial. You've obviously built on the back of those PPPs, in the market, and I'm sure that you feel the same as me, is that, this wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had 14 years of experience and RPPs out there that know what they're doing, know how to build. And we've moved from this, 1-to-1, 20-year contracts to, in the last few years, we've had these sort of bilaterals, the Sassels of the world, which is sort of another 1-to-1 or 1-to-many, one project being built for 1 or 2 off-takers. And now we're moving into this world of sort of many-to-many with traders, aggregators, wheeling. It's just phenomenal if we actually take a step back and look at what we've done. And I think this is just South Africans, we'll do it. But how have you seen that the PPPs of the past have sort of formed a foundation or not for your business and given you that confidence that you can launch your new business? So
it's been an interesting experience, because we came at this round five, in between round 5, round 6. It's sort of where we entered on this, so we came at it a very, very fresh sort of perspective on this. And the one thing I think that we've seen is there's a huge amount of anchoring and adjustment happening here, because the PPPs have and the REAP rounds have sort of set the base for how these contracts should work, how these procurement processes work, how the banks should do it, and it's done enormously well, and we can't possibly hope to comment on everything on that, but I hope maybe we'll bring a fresh perspective. The one thing that we found is when you look at some of these terms, it's when you look at a multiple to multiple market, or you look at a bilateral or something like that, you always got to ask yourself, this is the way it's been done in the past, and is it still relevant at this point in time? And often we found is, for us, just given our ignorance to this entire process, you often, what is considered dogma and just the rules of the game, you sort of ask yourself a question: does that actually apply? And the reason we're asking these questions, as everyone knows these 20-year contracts. There's always this 20-year contract with these rules, these guarantees. You have the beautiful situation where you have a government backing on it. Now you're in a completely different world where the customer is actually saying to you, listen, I'd love to buy a long-term contract, but I've got a lease on my property for 12 years, so I can give you 12 years. And usually the answer would be, sorry, we do it 20 years, I'm going to go find someone else, which unfortunately cuts out an enormous chunk of the actual market around that. So our approach has been, our view of it is someone's got to take a risk on it, and there is precedent internationally for people taking a risk on shorter ones. But the question is, how far can you take that risk before everyone is too uncomfortable? What is that sweet spot where people say, I'm just uncomfortable enough for us to get this done? And we're going to keep on pushing. Right now, I think we're seeing the template being changed for how these things are contracted. I think we've still got a long way to go, though.
No, absolutely. So, maybe we'll just take a few questions, if there are any questions in the audience. I think this is a fascinating topic. Do you want to comment first before we take questions, or do you want to see what's asked?
No, I just want to make a comment.
Yes.
So how much time do we have? So, and that's coming back to my thing about speed. So there's modeling being done on basis of Rethink X and these guys. They say we can do South Africa with 80 gigawatts of solar, 50 gigawatts of wind, and 30 gigawatts of storage. And everybody say, whoa, this is, Vito, it's crazy. Well, just imagine, or not imagine, it's a fact. Last year, in the first 4 months, up until April, China deployed 43 gigawatts of solar PV in 4 months. Come on, we've got the space, we've got the resources, we could do that as well. We can easy, and if you said 6 megawatts per year for renewables, gigawatts, it should be solar alone, 6 gigawatts, in order to achieve that 80 gigawatts by 2040. So how much time do we have? Well, I don't know how much time the planet will give us. And that is actually what it needs to be done. The beauty about that kind of scenario, 80, 50, 30, 80 wind, 80 gigawatts wind, 50 gigawatts of 80 gigawatts of solar, 50 of wind, and 30 of storage, will give us a 24/7, 356 days, no load shedding energy, and supply the 261 terawatt hours of energy to the country that currently we use less because we don't have the energy. But it would give us that kind of energy for running the country, plus it would generate 160 terawatt hours of energy, free energy, that is available for building industry. We were talking about industrialization. That's a big topic. How can we take our minerals to the next step? So that is the approach we should do, and we should really fast track that rollout of the renewables at that price level we are at. So sorry, that was just a comment. It shouldn't be only 6 gigawatt for the entire industry. It should be much more than that in order to achieve a complete renewables energy outlook.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes.
I might just comment to what Vito said. So I know it's off topic, it's veered off topic a little bit, but I would like to add is what he's saying is quite right, is, we can do it here. What I think is lacking is the vision, because there is no future vision for this. This is just kind of short term, we're going to fix that. For an example, Australia. Australia is a population that is less than half of South Africa. Australia is a huge piece of land. It's got a lot of renewable resource there. There is probably more solar going to go into Australia than currently going into South Africa, and they can cover their 24 million people. But what they're looking at is what else they can do. So they're looking at green hydrogen and exporting green hydrogen. They're looking at one of the things that they possibly could do is export, and they have a much more difficult export path because they've got to export to Singapore. They've got to do undersea cables for that. But these are things that they're exploring. They're looking to the future, they're investing in it, and they're seeing how can we do this. And a lot of this, by the way, is also not supported by government. It's just like private enterprise doing it. South Africa can do it. We used to export a lot of energy. We still do, but you could do a lot more because the resources here in the Sahara, they think you're the same thing. In Saudi Arabia, think you're the same thing. Where's our vision? Saudi Arabia has, I think it's their 2030 vision. We need a vision like that, and we need it to be pushed, and it needs to be pushed by those that are responsible. I mean, industry, commercial enterprise, they can push, but you need that support that comes from the public sector.
Fantastic. Vision and opening policy, right, which I think we are seeing in South Africa at the moment, which is great. I think we had a question in the front. If you can just introduce yourself and ask the question. Are there any other questions in the room after this one? One over there, and the third one here. Thanks. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Oops, sorry. Thanks for a very interesting session and inputs. My name is Matt Cullinan. I'm the CEO of the Atlantis Green Tech Special Economic Zone, which is here in Cape Town. Derek, you were talking about just how with the IPP in the early days, there was a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement, and then there was that kind of wobble that came into the program, and the importance of certainty and knowing that your market is there in the long term if you're going to invest. And it's kind of that challenge as well that Andre and Discovery Green are sort of looking at. But are you seeing, sufficient confidence now in this market? And I guess it applies also to Vito, are you seeing sufficient confidence now in the market, its future, that you would consider sort of localization of your manufacturing, of what you're supplying into the market now?
So just a comment, we are localizing, by the way. So the problem is some of the companies that we want to localize with have now stopped their production. If you look into the steel industry, and are not capable of doing it. Just to comment on what Vito said, is unfortunately, I think if you wanted to do that large capacity, South Africa couldn't do it because they're closing down their steel industry. So people are moving out because they're just not making money. But to get back to the question about confidence, yes, I got confidence. And the confidence I've gotten it because now private enterprise is involved. And private enterprise have shown that they've got a push for it. So they're allowed to now build their own power plants. So when you start looking at the mines and industry, and I've always had the conviction that a mine or an industry that's a long-term industry is going to always want that power and going to want to pay for it because they need it to run their business and they need it to run it 24 hours a day to be profitable. So if an enterprise does it, that's the greatest thing. We're doing in Zimbabwe, which probably would be high risk, but we're doing it on a platinum mine. So that's the type of area we want to go into. There may be other industries in other parts of the world where they've got PPAs. In Togo, for example, we're quite happy to do it because it's not the government that's buying it. It's an industry that's buying the energy. Now, we're just an equipment supplier, but we want to know that there's continuity because we want to do the next project in Togo, and so on, because we've got people in the region that we need to keep employed. So, sustainability and being there for the long term. Our product is a 30, 40-year product. We're there to support it for 30, 40 years, and we want to keep supplying into that region, wherever it might be.
Yeah, maybe commenting to that, because I had my experience in this. I built a solar factory here in South Africa, in Cape Town, in Epping, not far from here, in 2014, because of the REAP program. But you know all what happened in 2014. That program got stalled. And it was not only us doing a solar factory, it was inverter factories, it was junction boxes, it was all sorts of local content and promises based on this is going to be the rollout. You cannot have an industry function on a start-stop kind of rollout of these kind of programs. It needs to be continuous. The IRP 2019 had gaps in it. There were like a year where there was no procurement for solar. Then there was like gaps for 2 years. That doesn't work for industry to put a factory down. And if you have once burnt your fingers, then it's very hard to be convinced again to do it again. Absolutely prepared to do it. We are currently have actually completed a factory in Texas, in the US. They have got a vision, they have got a complete plan how that's going to roll out. We're doing module assembly and a cell factory in the US, 5 gigawatts. Yes, this can happen in South Africa, but you know, for industrialization, the first thing you need is electricity. We don't have it at the moment. So for now, I would say stall it. There is no confidence in doing it at this point in time. Should we have enough energy, like, for example, having a program like that where you've got the superpower, this extra electricity where you can put industry in? Yes, definitely. And Bertha, I think you mentioned something earlier in terms of duties need to be applied. Completely the wrong approach. We've seen it in all the other markets. Every time they deployed duties, the industry just collapsed. We need to have a pull effect. So, you know, there's this carrot and stick. The duty is a stick, doesn't work. A carrot is what works. So you have to really attract the people to come here and say that this is. How can you do it? You put out an IRP that shows that every year there's 5 to 6 to 8 gigawatts of solar deployment. And it can be a combination out of, you know, the REAP program or the new REAP program, whatever that's going to be, and private sector. Then, of course, if there's a carrot to do that, industry will come and invest and do these kind of factories. But it needs that kind of policy. The US have just done it. They're very committed to this. This is the way they're going to go. And if you've got this vision, as you said, if you've got this long-term plan, then people will say, okay, cool, I'll invest into this because for the next 10 years, there's a market, there's things happening. And I think that is missing. So every time we see positive signals, we get like a bang on the nose saying, yeah, but you guys, you're just lobbyists and you don't want to really invest into this country. We do. I definitely want to do it. We've done it in Brazil. Brazil had a program like that. We basically put a factory down in Brazil. We've got a factory in Canada for North America now, and in the US. In Vietnam, same things. Vietnam is a similar situation, and with us, we had a huge factory in Vietnam. We're producing there as well. So there is a way to get industry into that country and have that confidence. And I think Atlantis shows a very great opportunity for renewable companies to come and invest. But yeah, that confidence is a challenge. That's one of the things. And another thing that we are lacking in South Africa at this point in time is skills to roll out these kind of programs. I think one of the most important things government needs to focus right now is skills, and more skills. In order to do that, that's the biggest job creator. We can create so many jobs in this industry. It's amazing, but not really through manufacturing, because manufacturing is a minute portion of labor because it's mostly automated. And therefore, this program can be a great GDP contributor, can be a great job creator, with that vision to have this bold vision and goal where we want to go. So I think that's, hope that answers your question.
Very very passionate people about localization and confidence and skills. I think we had a question on the other side over there.
Hello, it's Paul Hughes here from Price Forbes. I just have a question around how we're packaging and we're addressing grid connection issues. Do you think we would have more success if we allowed projects to add the grid connection section into their projects? Because it's only going to have a minor impact on pricing. So if we had shovel-ready projects that were allowed to put the grid connection in themselves, do you not think we would see a lot or greater traction in the industry?
Thanks, Paul. I mean, I think maybe I can take that and then hand over to Vito. I mean, there has been, in projects, there is a self-build option with Eskom, but more on the actual, grid connection part, not necessarily on the transmission line, although some projects have done transmissions. But Vito, I don't know if you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's where it's going to go, because Eskom at the moment, at this point in time, can't do it. So, for them to raise more funds to do this kind of stuff, it might change if we have got a transmission company that gets properly set up and funded, which is at the moment in the process to happen. It should have happened already, let's put it this way. But if that comes through, yes, then there is a big potential to do that. But at the moment, I think, yes, it is something that the developer needs to look into. But yeah, cost is quite a big portion on that.
Great, thanks. And then we had one last question here in the front.
Hi there, question for Discovery. It's Teresa Smith, I'm from ESI Africa, and I'm very curious what you are actually trying to get into, the financing side of it, the creating of power side of it, wheeling. Just what are you up to?
I struggle to hear the question there.
What exactly are you up to with your products?
We want to give vitality points for using energy. No, not at all. We maybe just a little bit more light on it. The generation part is a very complex engineering problem. Connecting to grid is an engineering problem. But once it's on, I think it changes from an engineering problem to a mathematical problem at that point in time. I think every time you look at a certain generating plant, you have a solar plant or a wind farm generating, and if you look at a business, everyone runs into the same issue. When I get to 60%, when I cover 60% of my consumption, I start touching these points in the year where I'm generating but I'm not consuming. And that costs a lot of money. I mean, basically what your 70-cent soda is then becoming a 71, 72, and then the more renewable you want to go, the more expensive it's going to get. And that is a sort of a fundamental problem. So, I mean, it's a great first step. But, we think, South Africa as companies, especially those who want to export internationally, CBAM coming, we want to get to a high percentage. We have to get to a high percentage of renewable energy generation or penetration or coverage within companies. So our approach is was actually to say, listen, surely this is a mathematical problem that could be solved. And luckily, you asked Discovery what we're up to. We have an excess supply of mathematicians and actuaries at Discovery. Once you throw that sort of problem to them, our approach has been, this is a problem that can be solved through diversification. If you have enough industries coming together, and I'll give you a very, very practical sort of example. I mean, I'll use a vitality example. We have gyms that we partner with. Now, if you think about a gym uses a lot of energy in the morning, flat during the day, and a lot of energy at night. Now, they probably pay the most per kilowatt hour than anyone in the country, but it is a profile that is completely not suited to solar, for example, on that. But if you were to combine that, say, with a pharmacy, for example, it uses a lot during the day and a little bit of a load at night. That diversification element, just a very practical example, actually, if you combine those two profiles, you get something that's actually a lot more similar to solar and a wind combination. So you've gone from a 20 to 30% renewable energy coverage to a 70, 80% renewable coverage. Not by changing where you buy your energy from, but just combining different companies all over the place. Another example, manufacturing in South Africa sort of shuts down in December. I think we all see that or hear that, but the obvious industry that does very well in December in South Africa, particularly in Cape Town, is the leisure industry. So you can see how the hotel groups we look at, they go 1.5, 1.8 times the amount of electricity they use during that time, especially now during mining indaba. So you can see how there's almost a symbiotic relationship between these. And that was sort of our argument, it says, and with enough diversification, enough scale, you can actually offer companies 90% renewable energy coverage on that, without the risk of wasted generation. I think that is what we want to get to, because once everyone is emptied out on a single plant on, say, 60%, I don't think there's anyone out there that's going to be able to sell you that last 40 in the next 10 years. So we've taken that view, and that's sort of what we're up to.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think we'll close out there. I think it's been a really fascinating conversation, looking at both historical, the PPPs and how they really benefited us and allowed us to build this industry, which we're so fortunate to be a part of. Looking at the current market, really bilaterals, trading, etc., and looking to the future, more PPPs, bilateral trading, aggregators, even talk now of electricity tokens, there's just this really, really innovative industry that has been built. So I'm just going to hand over to each of the panelists, maybe just for half a minute, 1 minute closeout, if there's anything you would specifically like to leave our audience with. And then we will close out. Thank you, Vito.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Maybe a bit of a controversial topic, and that is that we are now in South Africa, and also I've just come back on Saturday from Tanzania, talking about nuclear power deployment. And don't get me wrong, I'm the biggest nuclear fan, okay? I'm absolute pro-nuclear, but not on this planet. I'm talking about that nuclear fusion plant up there in the sky, the sun. And if I look at cost, Hinkley Point is not completed yet. It's the last kind of thing. And they are already at 46 billion pounds. Really? Are we still thinking about nuclear in today's age? So if you take South Africa, we've got a place called Vaal Pits. That's where our nuclear waste goes. And there's an exclusion zone of a radius of 30 kilometers. So it's a diameter of 60 kilometers, like a kind of circle there you can't go. If you just take that area and you plaster it with solar panels, of course you don't do that, you have to have it rows and space in between, but should you just imagine that area, that exclusion zone, be plastered with solar panels, that would produce more energy than we currently use in South Africa. So it gives you the space and production capacity which one needs to think about. And the other little topic that I want to talk about is storage. So everybody says, Vito, 30 gigawatts of storage. How do you think we're going to get there? Well, imagine we've got already over 10% storage currently with our pump storage schemes. So we have got these hydro plants that are there. We have got also, a lot of battery deployment that's already in the space. But I came here this morning with my little EV, an i3, and it has got 30 kilowatts as a battery, 30 kilowatt hours. Now, I charged it yesterday, it was nice, sunny, I got it fully charged. It's standing down there in the basement. You can use it during the day. Use it for this event, for the lights, for the mics, for everything. And leave me about 20% so that I get home again and that I can charge again. So it is going to be a combination of technologies. So the automotive industry plus the energy industry all are looking for storage solutions and to improve them and get higher energy density. So all these things have to come together in order to make that work. I think it's very easy to achieve the 30 gigawatt hours of 30 gigawatts capacity over a certain period of time of battery storage in South Africa. So I think these are the things we need to think. We need to think visionary, big, bold, and really make it happen. We're one of 6 countries in the world that has got ideal solar and wind resources. We should utilize them.
Absolutely, thank you. Derek?
Yeah, so I must say I agree with Vito, so we probably come from the same cloth on that. And just to comment on something you had said earlier about localization in the United States, it has been incredible what I've seen. The biggest problem they have now is availability of people. So unemployment is very close to zero, and the biggest resource problem is people resources. Because so much is happening. And this is for putting solar into the country. So that's just a comment. And when you have something incentivized, I think they maybe made the incentivization a little bit rich, but at least there's a commitment behind it and a belief that that commitment will be met. And just on a positive note, I would say South Africans are extremely resourceful. I mean, whether it's in a bad way sometimes, but generally it's all in a good way. That South Africans always find a way of doing things. Whenever we are faced in this country with a challenge, we overcome it. I mean, even with load shedding, everybody seems to have found how do you manage it and how do you live with it. So they've managed their lives around it. South Africans are really, when I come back to South Africa and visit, I'm always amazed at how resourceful South Africans can be. And I think that sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot because we don't use the resources that we have. And we have everything going in the country. So it's just, sometimes government has to get out of the way. They have to facilitate and make sure they support it, but sometimes they also should step aside and say, guys, get on with the business, get it done, and put it in. Because you do have everything available here. So that's kind of my kind of positive note. So, and thank you very much for paying attention.
Thanks very much, Derek. And Andre?
I don't have much to conclude on, but we've been here at the mining in Durban, the conference and all the events around it, and the only thing that we've all noticed, the whole team is here, we're all walking around meeting with people, is there is an incredible buzz around energy and renewable energy. It is incredible. I mean, you go to some of these events, which are mining-specific events, and it feels like a renewable energy conference happening at that. I think this is a big topic. And maybe talking to your earlier point around local production or, getting connected to the grid or something like that. There's this serious enthusiasm right now in the private industry, in the private sector to get going on that. It might not be a plan or it might not be a vision yet on that, but I definitely bank on the private sector doing something in the space on that, and we're just excited to play a role. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you so much. So thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you so much to the audience. I think we've really heard today how we can take our past, the PPPs, what we've done, what South Africa has achieved, but let's envision that future and let's plan it and let's just do it. I think we're so good at that as South Africans, right? Let's just all put our heads together. There's enough opportunity for everybody. There's so much renewables that needs to be built in whatever means it gets built. But let's just go out there and let's use these next few days, I think, at this conference to really connect and make sure that we build our vision of the future. So thanks, everybody, for your joining us this morning. Thank you.